Hello crafty viewers, welcome to part 1 of a 3-part card series using the beautiful papers from the Feels Like Frost Designer Series paper collection from Stampin' Up. For the first 2 cards, we are going to be using this gorgeous piece of paper, and we're going to make 2 cards from it. And for today's video, we're going to start with this first card. So sit back and see how I put it together. The very first thing that we're going to do is I am going to work on the strip that goes with the first card. Now this strip is cut to 1 1/4 inches wide, and we are going to use the medium size poinsettia from the Poinsettia Petals collection stamp set. And we're going to just stamp in Versamark ink randomly around the piece here. So before I do that, because I'm using VersaFine, I do want to use my powder tool and just get rid of any kind of oils from my fingers. And that way you won't have stray pieces of the silver embossing powder going everywhere. I'm going to make this a very random pattern, and the key to making it look right is stopping and stamping kind of off the strip. So none of these will actually cover the full strip, but I do want to just kind of randomly twist and turn the stamp so that you have a pattern just kind of randomly distributed across the paper. Set that aside, and I'm going to pull out some silver embossing powder. One quick check to make sure I have good coverage, and I'm going to set this aside for a minute. Because while we're at it and we have the heat gun ready to go and the embossing powder out and I'm making a mess, I'm going to stamp the sentiments for both cards. Now that Merry Christmas fits on a 3-inch wide strip, and I'm also going to use the embossing powder on this to stamp it in silver. So I'm going to give this a good powder real quick. And use our Versamark ink. Get it nice and juicy. And give it a good press. And let's bust out the embossing powder again. This is just like magic. I just love embossing powder. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my punch, and we're going to use the curvy piece right here, and use the one that's not quite as hot, slide that in, make sure on the back that it's seated in the middle and it's seated flush with the back edge. Now, to do a quick measurement, you need to have a piece of paper. You add 1/8 of an inch on each side on top of the final length that you want your piece of paper to be in. So that's an extra 1/4 inch total because this little piece here cuts off 1/8 of an inch. Okay, there we go. We have our pieces here, our outside sentiments, and we have our embossed strip. Again, that was 5.5 by 1 1/4 inch that we stamped with the Poinsettia Petals flower stamp. And I have a piece of basic gray paper. This is cut to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And this is a piece of the Designer Series paper from Feels Like Frost. This is cut to 4 by 5 1/4 inches. And when you're assembling your card, you need to make sure that the drips are going down. That took me a while to figure that one out because it seems like this looks like it makes more sense, but the drips are facing upwards. So when you assemble the card, make sure the drips are facing down. Now to adhere that, we're just going to use some Stampin' Seal on the back. And going to mount that right in the middle so that there's an 1/8 of an inch reveal all around. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to adhere down our strip here. And the strip is going to get mounted about, let's see, 3/4 of an inch in. And it does go from end to end. Now this card is made using some of the vellum, flocked vellum paper, and that was from the Poinsettia Petals collection. And I use the flower die that cuts out the flower that matches both this paper as well as one of the printed papers in the Designer Series paper set. And if you watched my other video, I'll put a link for it up in the corner up here. So I'm just going to line up the kitty cat ears and run this through my die cutting machine. I will be right back. And there we go. There's our second poinsettia. Now, the one thing that I found when I was designing this card was when I simply had the flower sitting on the card, it kind of lacked some oomph. If you have this piece of white paper behind it, it just really makes the flower pop. And I thought that that's a great way of using the paper for a standalone, quick and easy poinsettia flower. And I just cut a piece out from some copy paper, printer paper, and it doesn't have to be fancy. I do have a piece here, and this is about, I don't know, 2.5 by 2.5, 2.5 by 3 inches, 3 by 3 maybe. So I'm going to cut a piece out for this card, and then we're going to use this other one for the second card that we're going to make, so I'll be right back. Okay, there we go. Now, we can adhere this together pretty much using anything that you want to use. If you want to use glue, you can use glue. If you want to use a glue dot, you can use a glue dot, because once we add the little center on the flower, you're never going to see the adhesive like you would with normal vellum. I am going to use some glue dots. And I'm going to make sure that the glue dot does sit right in the middle of the flower where the center is going to get added on. Again, look for the kitty cat ears. And quick and easy to line that up. Now I am going to use a dimensional to adhere this onto the card. I'm going to use a couple dimensionals. our poinsettia is going to sit right here. Before I adhere that down, I am going to adhere this sprig, and the sprig is using a die that is in the bundle here. And I'm going to use some glue to hold this down. Now, the center of the flower looks a little blah. So I took the flower center, also in the Poinsettia Petals dies, and I cut them out of the same silver paper that I used for the sprig, and I glued them together. This is going to get glued down as well. And that just goes right here in the middle. And that just adds a little extra sparkle to the card. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to attach our beautiful sentiment here, also using some dimensionals. And this card is almost done. I'm going to mount this right down here, just overlapping the pretty embossed strip just a little bit. Now I like to have, when I use sparkly embellishments, I like to keep patterns of 3. So here you can see we have at least 3, actually 4 different places that we have the silver. And I think doing that with the monochromatic look really makes a nice look for the card. The very last thing that I'm going to add is I'm going to add some frosted and clear epoxy droplets. These are in the annual catalog. And I am going to use the frosted ones because I think that just really goes nicely with the water droplets and the bokeh look here. So we're going to add 3 little epoxy droplets to the front of our card. This gets mounted on the outside of our card base, and because it is full coverage, we can actually just use the adhesive on the front of the card and not have to worry about any kind of reveal. Always make sure you know which side is up before you adhere it down. There's our first card.